Friends, in these modules, we have been discussing the various issues and ideas pertaining to philosophy and aesthetics, designed for the postgraduate course in philosophy and aesthetics for the students of visual arts. In this particular module, we are planning to discuss Jean-Francois Lyotard and his analysis of the notion of sublime. If you remember, we have already discussed sublime earlier while talking about Horace and Longinus. Then we tried to understand the romantic interpretation of sublime, and today we are trying to inquire into the postmodern understanding of this notion. The French post-structural philosopher Jean-Francois Lyotard elaborates on the idea of postmodernism in his book, The Postmodern Condition. Lyotard's writings cover a large range of topics in philosophy, politics and aesthetics and experiment with a wide variety of styles. His works include early writings on phenomenology, politics and the critique of structuralism, the intermediate libidinal philosophy and later work on postmodernism and the different. He searches for new ways of analyzing art, culture, society and politics that form new methods of action for the better, not subscribing to the ill-repute postmodernism as a theory for anything goes. His thoughts make a valuable contribution in the sense that they question the established processes and systems of organizing ideas and society. Lyotard's philosophy exhibits many of the major themes common to post-structuralism and postmodernist thought. He calls into question the powers of reason, asserts the importance of non-rational forces and such as sensations and emotions, rejects the humanism and the traditional philosophical notion of the human being as the central subject of knowledge, champions heterogeneity and difference, and suggests that the understanding of society in terms of progress has been made obsolete by the scientific, technological, political and cultural changes of the late 20th century. Lyotard deals with these common themes in a highly original way, and his work exceeds many popular conceptions of postmodernism in its depth, imagination and rigor. His thought remains pivotal in contemporary debates surrounding philosophy, politics, social theory, cultural studies, art and aesthetics. Life. His life and career needs to be referred to here. Lyotard was born in Vincennes, France on August 10, 1924. He studied at the Paris Lycée Buffon and Louis Le Grand, and his youthful wish was to be a monk, a painter, an historian or a novelist. Eventually gave way to a career in philosophy. He studied philosophy and literature at the Sorbonne after twice failing in the entrance exam to the École Normale Supérieure, where he became friends with Gilles Deleuze. His early interest in philosophies of indifference resulted in his MA dissertation, Indifference as an Ethical Notion. The war disrupted both his way of life and his thought. He acted as a first aid volunteer in the fight for liberation in the Paris streets in August 1944 and gave up the idea of indifference for a commitment to the investigation of reality in terms of social interactions. Lyotard became a husband and a father at a young age, marrying André May in 1948 and subsequently having two children, Pauline and Laurence. Lyotard passed the agrégation, the examination required in order to teach in France, and took up a position teaching philosophy at a boys' lycée school in Constantine in French-occupied East Algeria in 1950. In Constantine, Lyotard read Marx and became acquainted with the Algerian political situation. which he believed was ripe for socialist revolution. In 1954, Lyotard joined the Socialist Revolutionary Organization, Socialisme au Barbarie, that is Socialism of the Barbarism. Lyotard became an intellectual militant, and for 15 years he was dedicated to the cause of socialist revolution. His writings in this period were mainly concerned with ultra-left revolutionary politics with a sharp focus on the Algerian situation. The War of Independence has broken out in 1954. He contributed to and edited the Socialisme au Barbarie journal and wrote pamphlets to distribute to workers at protests and at factory gates. Later, his belief in the legitimacy of Marxism as a totalizing theory changed and ended in many ways as he returned to the study of writing of philosophy. From 1959 to 1966, Lyotard worked at Sorbonne and then gained a position in the philosophy department at the University of Paris 10, that is Nanterre. There he took part in May 1968 political action, organizing demonstrations for the March 22nd movement. Lyotard attended the psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan's seminars in mid-60s, and his reaction to Lacan's theories resulted in another book, Discourse Figure, for which he received the doctorate degree. From 1968 to 70, Lyotard was in charge of research at the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique. In the early 1970s, Lyotard was appointed to the University of Paris 8, Vincennes, where he was a popular teacher and a prolific writer. In 1972, he was made Maître de Conférences, and in 1987, he became the Professor Emeritus in Vincennes. In the 1979 publication of the Postmodern Conditions brought Lyotard the worldwide fame, and in the 1980s and 90s, he lectured widely outside France. Lyotard was Professor of French and Italian at the University of California, Irvine, Robert W. Woodruff Professor of French at Emory University, and a founding member and sometimes president of the College International de Philosophy. Lyotard was a visiting professor at numerous universities, including Johns Hopkins, the University of California, Berkeley and San Diego, the University of Minnesota, the University of Montreal, Canada, the University of Siegen, West Germany, and the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Lyotard married his second wife, Dolores Zidze, in 1993 and had a son, David. Lyotard died of leukemia in Paris on April 21st, 1998. The life of Lyotard was very important because he has continuously altered his views and he has lived the ideology that he has pleaded. Lyotard's writings are inspired by the dissatisfaction with the current ideas and the internal search and importance given to justice. According to him, thought and action must constantly renew themselves, and he even kept questioning his own theories and ideas, which is reflected from his life and writings. The postmodern condition has had a large impact on the discussion of postmodernism, which began around the 1980s. The book itself has become integral to writings on postmodernism and has been used almost as a definition to the phenomenon. The well-known line, definition postmodernism as an incredulity towards meta-narratives, is quoted very often when trying to understand postmodernism. The central question that Lyotard deals with in his book is how are the lives and identities of people constructed by contemporary structures of knowing. According to Lyotard, the status of knowledge is altered as society enters what is called the post-industrial age. This leads to what Lyotard is known as the postmodern age. Lyotard demonstrates how knowledge has become a commodity sold in the market with the use of modern technology like computers. Knowledge in the form of informational commodity is a major stakeholder in the search for power. The most powerful countries, therefore, would be the ones who possess most knowledge resources. Since knowledge itself is a commodity, the state is losing power to multinational companies as these firms spend funds to acquire knowledge and patent it and claim ownership over the knowledge, which is then used to make money again. Conglomerates, therefore, threaten to take over the decision-making powers of governmental, legal and culture-making bodies throughout the world. The second part of his argument talks about different types of knowledge in the world and how they must be talked about separately. He differentiates between two kinds of discourses, scientific knowledge and narrative knowledge. Scientific knowledge cannot claim to know everything, or rather does not represent totality of knowledge, while narrative knowledge are the stories that people tell to explain their existence, history and ambitions of the future. He says that history is also part of narrative. In it, that we create a narrative about the past, psychology that tells stories about the self, and sociology about the society. Even science has to use narrative to explain their findings, even though these would be based on mathematics. Evidently, different narratives would have different rules. Lyotard calls the different discourses as language games, a term coined by Wittgenstein. Three observations with this regard, he says. First, the rules of this language game are the object of a contract, explicit or not, between the players. So basically, rules of any language game or reference are not naturally existent, but created by a community. Like, say, rules of poetic language or biology or any other. Second, every utterance is like a move in that game. And third, that without such rules, there would be no game. All games could also be influenced by the moves and rules of other games, and that social bond is composed of such language moves. Society is based upon whether a certain move is legitimate or not in generic terms. And different societies create their own policies, laws and other ways of legitimization. We, as individuals, are subject to these language games and rules, and our own identity is formulated within these language rule structures. He says, a self does not amount to much, but no self is an island. Even before he is born, if only by virtue of the name he is given, the human child is already positioned as the referent of a story recounted by those around him, in relation to which he will inevitably chart his course. He goes on to try and understand how these various languages and organizations of language works through meta-narratives. Meta-narratives is a narrative about narratives of historical meaning, experience or knowledge, which offers a society legitimation through the anticipated completion of our as yet unrealized master idea. Lyotard explored the different ways in which we organize knowledge in different fields. He says that in pre-modern societies, the narrated history or story would also include mentioning the narrator and the history of who told the story to him. In modern narratives, there is also an expectation of a better future and the idea of better future, not just the telling of the past. Lyotard identifies two kinds of modern narratives: the speculative grand narrative and the grand narrative of emancipation. The speculative grand narrative is the large overall body of knowledge that becomes the basis with which all language games of a particular kind are judged, and the grand narrative of freedom is the idea seen through history of man's right to his freedom, seen in different forms throughout history, like the French Revolution, the church reforms as freedom from religious oppression, the Marxist idea of the workers' freedom, etc. Both these grand narratives project a sort of understanding and goal for the future as being answers to the problem that society is facing. In such narratives, all institutions combine together to strive for a common goal for humanity: absolute knowledge and universal freedom. Thus, knowledge is playing a role in the greater good. According to Lyotard, the change that have been happened in the last century make these ideas a little doubtful. He says that the question of legitimization of knowledge is in different terms. The grand narratives have lost their value. Knowledge is no longer organized for human ideals, but rather for the efficiency and profitability in a market-driven economy. So it is the transformation of knowledge marked by the incredulity to meta-narratives that defines the notion of the postmodern for Lyotard. Lyotard believes that the ideals and the project of the modernist narrative has become lost, liquidated in many ways, and capitalism has become the driving force. The economic drive has also destroyed the traditional bonds in humanity like truth and justice no longer appeal and apply to human concerns. The individual himself finds himself in conflicting political and moral rules. Lyotard sees hidden agendas and political problems in the grand narrative as well. The grand idea of freedom and the freedom from suppression gave a false legitimization to the process of colonization and missionary expansion. Lyotard says that the end of grand narrative and the ideals of justice and truth do not mean that it is a hopeless efficiency-driven capitalism that we are always going to live in. He proposes that we break down these language games into little narratives to prove that we cannot be generalized to this criteria of efficiency. Once the grand narrative have fallen away, what is left? These diverse set of language games and what is interpreted. Lyotard talks about how a language move has the potential to break the language rules, like in quantum physics, how the discovery of movement of subatomic particles has changed how the larger rules in quantum physics are seen. Or it is the power that destabilizes the capacity to explain. The search for paralogy in a particular language game with introduction to a new language move can potentially destabilize a certain narrative. Destabilizing power is explained in many ways by Lyotard, including the notion of the sublime. Art, the sublime, and the postmodern Lyotard speaks of art and aesthetics in the same radical vein. In his essay of 1982, an answer to the question, what is the postmodern, he talks about the potential of postmodern art and literature to challenge the established beliefs of representation and reality. In this essay, he examines the position of art in the contemporary culture. Lyotard is interested in the idea of nonconformist art that the avant-garde movement of art followed in the 20th century, and he was very much an advocate for the avant-garde. Habermas believed that modernity was an unfinished project and that the idea was not to discover paralogies but to communicate and understand the current position of humanity through art. And in that sense, he is a critique of Lyotard. Lyotard talks about art not as understanding of communication between various language games, but actually a way of pointing out the various flaws in this system. For Lyotard, postmodern is not irony and eclecticism or the idea of anything goes, but more so it is a realism of contemporary capitalism. Eclecticism is the degree zero of contemporary general culture. You listen to reggae, you watch a western, you eat McDonald's at midday and local cuisine at night. You wear Paris perfumes in Tokyo and dress retro in Hong Kong. Knowledge is the stuff of TV game shows. Together, artists, gallery owners, critique and public indulge one another in the anything goes. It is the time to relax. But this realism of anything goes is the realism of money. In the absence of aesthetic criteria, is it still possible to measure the value of work of art by the profile they realize? According to Lyotard, this is the day-to-day experience of contemporary culture. The whole world is at one's fingertip, so long as one has the cash or credit to consume. Realism, even the realism of the pastiche or anything goes, thus adopts the language games of the culture, from which it emerges and asserts the stability of those games by reflecting them back to the culture itself. In contrast to this realism, Lyotard talks about two alternatives, modernism and postmodernism, both of which set out to disrupt realism by questioning the rules that govern images and narratives. These are not two entirely different aesthetics and historical forms for Lyotard. Rather, the postmodern is a modification of the modern that further radicalizes the later challenges to resist representation. Lyotard defines modernism as the art that devotes its techniques to presenting the existence of something unpresentable as seen in many examples of modern art, showing that there is something we can conceive of which we can neither see nor show. The idea of presenting the fact that there is something unpresentable is a key idea in Lyotard's thought, and one that has frequently been misunderstood. Because it is so important for his definition of both modernism and postmodernism, it is crucial to grasp what might be at stake in it. Lyotard derives the idea of presenting that there is an unpresentable from Kant's discussion of sublime. When it comes to sublime, Lyotard presents a reading of the Kantian sublime in Lessons on the Analytic of the Sublime in 1994. Kant sees a negative aesthetic in sublime feeling, one in which nature does violence to the imagination, and so contradicts the fitness of propriety that nature has for our power of judgment in experience of the beautiful. In sublime feeling, nature no longer speaks to thought in which coded writing of its forms. Above and beyond the formal qualities that induce the quality of taste, thinking grasped by the sublime feeling is faced in nature with qualities capable only of suggesting a magnitude or force that exceeds its power of presentation. This powerlessness makes thinking deaf or blind to natural beauty. In the Critique of Judgment, Kant defines the sublime as that the mere ability to think which shows a faculty of the mind surpassing every standard of sense. The Kantian sublime goes beyond sense perception and the appreciation of external grandeur and focuses on the mental faculty that is able to comprehend what the senses cannot. He speaks of the limitation of imagination, and beyond that speaks of reason that is the most important tool, taking the fear and terror away from the terror sublime experiences towards a more pleasurable one. Pain is not the point at which human faculties end, but an overflow of the human faculties beyond the external and in towards a stronger understanding of the nature of human thinking itself is what is stressed upon. For this, Kant seems to indicate that we realize our superiority to nature within and without us. Lyotard describes the difference between imagination and reason as a different, irreconcilability, or complete difference or impossible of comparative nature, found at the encounter of the two absolutes equally present to thought: the absolute whole when it conceives, the absolute measured when it presents. The whole situation is treated as coming together of completely different entities, comparable to separate language games, each absolute in the self-enclosure of the rules. Imagination speaks of language of forms, of measures. Reason speaks a language of the without form or infinitude. The difference between them is irresolvable. This conflict is not an ordinary dispute, which a third instance could grasp and put an end to, but a different. Sublime feeling thus sensitizes us to an outside and an inside in thought, or to an abyss separating imagination and reason. The method behind the madness of the avant-garde, Lyotard contends, is incomprehensible unless one is already familiar with the incommensurability of reality to concept, which is implied in the Kantian philosophy of the sublime. Lyotard adopts the idea of the sublime to describe the way in which art or literature can disrupt established language games and ways of representing the world. Modern art, he argues, has the capacity to present the fact that the unpresentable exists, that there are things that are impossible to present in available language games, voices that are silenced in culture, ideas that cannot be formulated in rational communication. Following the two parts of the sublime feeling, the pain and the pleasure, the existence of the unpresentable can be singled out by the sublime in two distinct ways, one of which Lyotard calls modern and the other postmodern. This difference is the basis of the distinction between the two forms. Lyotard describes this difference in terms of modernist nostalgia and the postmodern jubilation. The accent can fall on the inadequacy of the faculty of presentation, on the nostalgia for presence experienced by the human subject and the obscure and futile with that animated in spite of everything. Or else, the accent can fall on the power of the faculty to conceive, on what one might call its inhumanity, and on the extension of being and jubilation that come from inventing new rules of the game, whether pictorial, artistic, or something else. Thomas Hoon, in a review of Lyotard's lesson on the analytic of the sublime, puts it this way: the sublime is the uncanny attempt by subjectivity to feel something other than itself. As Lyotard puts it, in sublime feeling, nature no longer speaks to thought in the coded writing of its forms. Above and beyond the formal qualities that induce the quality of test, thinking grasped by the sublime feeling is faced in nature, with qualities capable only of suggesting a magnitude or force that exceeds its power of presentation. This powerlessness makes thinking deaf or blind to natural beauty. The modernist sublime is thus tied up with the feeling of loss. The old language games no longer present the world adequately, and the feeling evoked is a wish to return to the stability or that earlier state. On the other hand, the postmodern sublime works through a sense of excitement at the failure of language games. The old rules have failed, it announces. Let us discover the new rules. In this sense, conception rules ahead of presentation as the collapsing structure of the realism challenged by the work of art indicates the possibility of a new, different, inhuman way of experiencing and thinking about the world. Some of the following are examples of this sublime. On the side of modernism, he places à la recherche du temps perdu. I am not very sure about the pronunciation. The novel by the French writer Marcel Proust that has been translated into English as both remembrance of things past and most recently in search of lost time. Proust's novel is one about memory and time. Its narrative is continually spurred on by a recurrence of memories evoked by stimuli, such as hitting a made line of tripping on a paving stone, which constantly promise to reveal and shape the character of the narrator. According to Lyotard, the thing that is eluded is the identity of consciousness, falling prey to an excess of time. In other words, the true character of the narrator remains finally unpresentable. However, despite this gap in presentation, the narrative itself retains a traditional form that presents the story as a unified whole. For Lyotard, this makes Proust's work nostalgic and therefore modern. It allows the unpresentable to be invoked only as absent content, while form, thanks to its recognizable consistency, continues to offer the reader or spectator material for consolation and pleasure. In contrast to this, Lyotard cites the later work of the Irish novelist James Joyce as postmodern. In novels such as Ulysses, Lyotard argues that Joyce makes us discern the unpresentable in the writing itself. A whole range of accepted narratives and even stylistic operators is brought into play with no concern for unity of the whole, and experiments are conducted with new operators. In other words, the sublime in Joyce is not just a question of missing contents such as the identity of the narrator, but rather occurs in the writing itself. Joyce's use of puns, obscure allusions, quotations, and his disruption of the established ideas of linear development and narrative sense challenge the reader's presuppositions about what a novel should be and continually undermines the desire to make the work make sense. One might constantly be at a loss about what the novel is about, but that loss is itself enjoyable and stimulating and might just lead one to raise questions about one's everyday sense-making processes. Lyotard's discussion on Joyce leads to his clearest definition of postmodern aesthetics. The postmodern would be that which in the modern invokes the unpresentable in presentation itself. That which refuses the consolation of correct forms, refuses the consensus of taste permitting a common experience of nostalgia for the impossible and inquiries into the new presentations, not to take pleasure in them, but to better produce the feeling that there is something unpresentable. For Lyotard then, postmodern art disrupts established artist structures and language games by testifying to the existence of the unpresentable, not as something missing from the content of the work, but as a force that shatters traditional ways of narration or representation. They break the rules and undermine the categories that the reader or viewers are used to raise questions about what is art and what is reality in their very structure. Insofar as a work of art resists or confounds self-perception and thus enables reason to become the primary means of enjoyment, it borrows from the aesthetics of the sublime. In this, says Lyotard, Kant himself shows the way when names formlessness, the absence of form, as a possible index to the unpresentable. He cites the commandment, "Thou shalt not make graven images," which is from Exodus, as the most sublime passage in the Bible, in that it forbids all presentation of the absolute. Painting thus seems to will avoid representation. It will be white like one of the Malevich square in an attempt to see only by making it impossible to see. But Lyotard points out that there are modes of sublimity in art, different ways of emphasizing the unpresentable allures to by means of technique. On one hand, emphasis is placed on the powerlessness of the faculty of presentation, on the nostalgia for presence felt by the human subject, on the obscure and the futile will which inhabits him in spite of everything. Lyotard labels this mode melancholia, in which a romantic striving communion with nature or absolute spirit always falls short but nevertheless persists. The feeling of regret is part of feeling of the melancholic sublime, and therefore Lyotard considers this mode of sublime sentiments as not the real sublime sentiment. The real sublime would be an intrinsic combination of pleasure and pain which underlies the avant-garde. So the other mode of sublimity in art, which Lyotard calls novatio, places emphasis on the increase of being and the jubilation which results from the invention of new rules of the game, be it pictorial, artistic or any other. The melancholic and the novatio modes of the sublime are distinguishable. Both, says Lyotard, allow the unpresentable to be put forward. But it is the recognizable consistency in form of artwork in the melancholic mode that continues to offer to the reader or viewer matter for solace and pleasure, and thereby reinforces the romantic nostalgia for nature or absolute spirit. But genuine sublime sentiments denies itself the solace of good forms, the consensus of taste, which would make it possible to share collectively the nostalgia for the unattainable. In this way, the avant-garde is analogous to the reflective judgment. In situation, the critical schema, which being outside of that schema. Reflective judgment goes in search of rules which it does not presently have. Lyotard picks up on this connection when he says a postmodern artist or writer is in the position of the philosopher. The text he writes, the work he produces are not in principle governed by pre-established rules, and they cannot be judged according to a determining judgment. By applying familiar categories to the text or to the work, those rules and categories are what the work of art itself is looking for. Avant-garde art, exemplifying the novatio sublime, is the possibility of infinite experiment and development which, by virtue of being infinite, is itself unpresentable. Painting, for example, is no longer a mere reflection of the socio-political and religious orders of things. Rather, it becomes solely a reflective endeavor to determine what painting is. In this way, the avant-garde resonates with the larger situation of postmodern culture. Postmodernity, says Lyotard, cannot exist without a shattering of belief and without discovery of the lack of reality of reality, together with the invention of other realities. Proceedings at a fast pace of change, which is simultaneously a collapse of metaphysical, religious and political certainties. Postmodernity becomes a quest for what next and in itself lacks any stability. The impact of one product of technoscopy, photography, and interesting if not paradoxical. Images produced mechanically, like photographs, achieve a degree of verisimilitude that outmatches practically anything hand produced, and for this reason one might conclude that photographs reinforce a sense of stability or reality to cultural forms better than realist styles of painting since the Quattrocento. Yet, photographs also have the potential for infinite production, and it is this sublime gesture itself which undermines any stability that their hardness of imagery might suggest. Before mechanical reproduction, it could reasonably be claimed of a hand-produced painting like the Mona Lisa that it is absolute unique and tied to a certain context of meaning, thus unambiguously authoritative. but after mechanical reproduction, leading to the Mona Lisa's appearance or on billboard, magazine advertisements and t-shirts, unity and stability of meaning are no longer possible. This is emblematic of what postmodern culture has both lost and found. It has lost its sense of presence or originating certainty, and it has gained infinity. Therein lies in the sublimity, which means that the aesthetics of the sublime serves as a mediating link between the avant-garde and the postmodern culture. Lyotard also portrays it as the means by which art may find its true destiny, in a way similar to how thought finds its destiny in criticism. The aesthetics of the sublime, first of all, reclaim art from its merely documentary function, rather than reflect the accepted order of things and dodge what Lyotard calls the question of reality implicated in that of art. Avant-garde art acknowledges and plays with the constructed nature of perception and worldview. The aesthetic of the sublime also recovers art from its more melancholic mode, rather than emphasize human loss and yearning for presence employing regular forms that indeed reinforce such nostalgia. Avant-garde art delights in constantly challenging received forms. It flushes out the artifices of representation which attempt to present the unpresentable. Though initially painful, the rebound to pleasure, so characteristic of sublime feeling, is all the more intense and is felt as an increase of being and jubilation according to Lyotard. Lyotard's strident call for the realization of sublime feeling in the avant-garde is ultimately a preventive against a return which he deemed fatal to old Enlightenment meta-narratives. He feels we must reclaim the nature of critical thought as it was before, situating principles constituting the critical schema. Thought must linger, must suspend its adherence to what it thinks it knows. It must remain open to what will orientate its critical examination, a feeling, by its endless inventiveness, limiting and yet fulfilled only in exploding limits. Thought recognizes its destiny not in the full commensurability of language games, but in their heterogeneity and the differences.